Hello students, welcome to today's DNA session dated 6 January 2026. Today we will be seeing about 5 articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express. Moving on to the list of articles, first article is No Bail for Woman and SHARJEEL, Delhi riots conspiracy case accused, and SC says it makes a distinction and 5 get relief. So this is an article from Indian Express where we talk about Supreme Court's new principle of hierarchy of participation. This is not very important according to UPSC's thing, but it is making a sensation in the headlines of the news today. Moving on to the next article, we will talk about new era of fiscal prudence where Delhi gets its own public account for the first time. So the Union Territory of the Delhi is the only UT or state which does not have a public account of its own. Third article is, we have already seen about Shanti bill ka implications in multiple DNAs before. So this will be a summing up article in which in the Hindu paper today there was an explained content which drafted all the provisions and every possible implications of the bill. So we will see this bill also as detail. Moving on to the next article, this article talks about annexation of Greenland by US, since US recently captured Venezuela, and if you see yesterday's DNA, you will figure out that sir explained about the intricate details of the capture of president by US, what is the operation name for it, on all the other details. But in this article we will see that US POTUS, President of the United States, told that he wanted to annex Greenland for strategical and resourceful purposes. So we will see about this article too. And the last article is one of the fantastic articles on science about what constitutes remote sensing and how is it useful in daily applications. So there is a high probability of question from second, third and fifth article, and we will see the allied articles too. Moving on to the next slide. So as I told you before, this article talks about bail being given by Supreme Court to the accused in Delhi riots conspiracy case. So this is the context of the news per se, but the main concept we will see, what are the things we will see regarding UPSC in this article is, we will see what is a bill, types of bail, the reasons why one should get a bail, the reason why one is refrained from getting a bail, necessities of getting a bail, and what is the difference between bail versus furlough versus parole. So these are the things we will be seeing in the explanation part of this article particularly. Moving on to the next slide. So as I told you, the first part will deal with the component of what constitutes a bail. What is a bail? A bail is a legal mechanism which will give an accused person release from a custody. For example, if somebody is convicted, that is a different case. But before conviction happens by the judiciary, trial happens. So person is framed of charges and a trial happens before judiciary. So when a person is under trial, he might be in custody so that evidence is not tampered with. So during this custody, one may be released from the custody through a legal mechanism called bail. So when to put this flow diagram in simple words, when a person is accused of something, he has to be convicted through trial by the judiciary. So during the trial, in the evidence extraction process or something, he needs to be in custody. To relieve from this custody during the interim period, he can be given bail, which is a legal mechanism for release from the custody whenever the trial or the investigation is going on. So on the assurance that the person who is accused will be present before the court whenever required. So this is what bail means. So what are the legal basis for bails? bail is governed by CRPC section 436 to 450, which is being revamped in BNSS 2. And it is rooted in Article 21 because Article 21 does not only constitute right to life but also talks about the component of personal liberty. So, if somebody is being in custody for long, the action of personal liberty gives them a legal mechanism to be released to. So, the act of release from custody constitutes the rootedness of Article 21 in bail, and this is a popular judgment from a case of state of Rajasthan where bail is the rule but jail is an exception. So, only bail is a rule because until convicted everybody should be treated as innocent. So, in this case bail is a rule and jail is an exception is a stance held by Supreme Court per se. What are the objectives of bail? The objectives of bail are, as I said before, until proven guilty you are still considered to be innocent. In that case, under trials should not be held unnecessarily in the name of custody. So, to prevent that, there is a legal mechanism to enable them with the release from the custody. Then this is a balance between liberty of an individual versus the process of justice. So, the process of justice requires a accused to be under custody, but the concept of liberty is contradicting to it. So, there needs to be a legal mechanism which frees an individual and protects his personal liberty. This is one of the objectives of bail. And finally, the ensured presence of accused during the trial is also ensured by bail. I told you before, there is whenever a bail is given, supplementarily an assurances should be given by the individual so that the person will appear before the court whenever required. So, this is the concept behind bail. So, we have seen what is a bail, what are the objectives of bail, and what is the legal basis behind bail. Moving on to the next slide, what are the different types of bail? It's maybe the whole of this PDF is made in such a way, it is made into a notes for you. So, you can read the PPT simultaneously as you see me explain, so that it will be better experimental for you and you can take note of it if it is required. Moving on to the next topic, types of bail, as I told you before. So, these are the things, there are multiple types of bail, but what are the things required for UPSC is dealt with here. So, what is a regular bail? As I told you before, a person who is already arrested needs to be released from custody. For those situations, that kind of particular bail is called as regular bail. It is being applied under section 437 and section 439 under the CRPC, and it's generally being granted by magistrate or the sessions high court, magistrate of the sessions or high court. So, this is the regular bail. This was the topic we talked about in the previous slide too. Moving on to the next type of bail, anticipatory bail. The name itself suggests anticipatory. So, even if before getting arrested, somebody can get an anticipatory bail so that they are released from the custody that is going to occur. So, it comes under section 438 of the CRPC. So, the number is not important, you should know if all of these bails are statutory in nature or not. So, that is why I am quoting all sections in the upcoming files. So, for any non-bailable offence, a person can prevent arrest or custody. A person can prevent the occurrence of arrest or custody by having a anticipatory bail. So, this becomes effective after the time of arrest, but this becomes effective at the time of arrest. This is the difference between regular and an anticipatory bail. Moving on to the next type of bail, interim bail. For example, if the magistrate does not give a final decision whether to give an anticipatory bail or a regular bail, before that, to ensure prevention of the individual, they will give something called as interim bail. So, this is a precursor to any anticipatory or regular bail when you apply to the magistrate. So, this is as I said to you before, this is a temporary bail which is a precursor to the two kinds of bail we saw in the previous slide. Moving on to the next type of bail, default or the statutory bail. This is probability in coming in UPSC, because it was considered a fundamental right recently. What is this kind of bail? When an investigating agency who kept you under custody, 1 minute, I will draw the diagram again. A person is kept under custody so that evidence can be created. Who is keeping under custody? The investigating agency. So if the investigative agency fails to complete the investigation within the prescribed time, that is 60 days for ordinary offence and 90 days for serious offence, then under section 167 you will be automatically given a statutory bail. So investigating agency does not complete the investigation within the prescribed time, so you have the statutory right or the default bail to be released and out of custody. So this constitutes your antithesis to your personal liberty. So interim bail is default bail is automatically given to you as a part of fundamental right under Article 21. So we have seen about 4 types of bails. Moving on to the next slide. As I told you before, what are the conditions under which a bail can be granted? Bails are generally granted by court when the offence is bailable and the individual is not likely to abscond, because that is the assurance which we saw in the definition of the bail, and he is not an habitual offender. The individual, when released out of the custody, should not tamper with the evidence that is being organized or collected by the investigating agency. He should cooperate with the investigation and should be presented before the court anytime requested. Releasing of the individual out of the custody is not a grave threat to the society or national security, and prolonged detention violates the right to speedy trial of the individual, which is a component of. So these are the conditions under which a bail is granted by a court. So what are the conditions under which bail is not granted? Half of them are opposites of what we saw before, but we will also see what are the conditions under which bail is not granted to the individual. Bail is generally denied when the offence is serious or heinous, such as these offences: murder, rape and terrorism. The accused may flee from the justice and he cannot be brought back into custody again, so then bail cannot be given. As I told you before, he has a possibility of tampering with the evidence that may be collected by the investigative agency, so that also comes into play. He is a threat to the witness or victim, so he should not go and threaten or torture the victim during the phase of investigation until he is convicted. The accused is a habitual or a repeated offender, so if he has done an offence before, it is highly possible that he may do all of this again. So that is why he is not, one of the reasons why he is not granted the bail. The crime affects national security or public order if he is an individual of heinous nature, and a strong prima facie evidence exists so that the case can be closed sooner, but there is no meaning to relieve the individual out of the custody. So these are the reasons, these are the some of the seven reasons under which bail is not granted. Moving on to this is one probable question UPSC might ask: what is the difference between bail, parole and furlough? Because UPSC has already asked the question regarding bail and parole, there is a high probability of bail, parole and furlough difference being asked in UPSC per se, or you should know so that you are able to solve any related questions to that. So moving on to the difference between bail, parole and furlough. So before moving on to the difference between bail, parole and furlough, before knowing the difference between all these three, you should know what constitutes a parole, what constitutes a furlough. So parole and furlough are nothing but during your time of your sentence. For example, post conviction, you are given a sentence of 3 years as a punishment to be inside prison. Then parole and furlough comes into play. Parole and furlough are breaks, either temporary or permanent, given so that the prisoner can go outside of the prison and have a temporary break or a replenishment, so that due to the reasons we will see before. So these two are breaks given to the prisoner to go out of the prison for some specific reasons. So, these constitute the definition of parole and furlough. Moving here, so as we have talked about bail, we can see what is the difference between bail, parole and furlough now. Obviously, bail is given before conviction, and as I told you now, parole and furlough are breaks given after you have been convicted in the sentence, because these two constitutes breaks given during the sentence. The purposes, as I told you before, bail has an assurance that the individual will be present any time during the trial, so it ensures appearance during the trial, while parole and furlough are temporary release for parole is generally given as a temporary release during any emergency of the individual, while furlough is a periodic break for reform. So, this is actually a concession given by the authority to go outside so that you can face an emergency, but this is a right of an individual, generally furlough is generally given at the fag end of the sentence, while parole can be given at any point of time depending upon the emergency of the prisoner. As I told you before, bail is a legal right. We saw the legal basis for bail, while parole and furlough, this is a concession given by the concerned authorities, while this is a right subject to rules given by the concerned authorities. Bail is only till the trial ends, and as we saw before, it is till the trial ends or before the conviction occurs, while parole is a break given for a short term and furlough is a longer fixed period break given. So, parole is a short term because it attends emergency, while furlough is given for a longer fixed period so that the reformed prisoner can go and attest to his social duties. Bail, the reason for giving bail is judicial reason, as we saw all the objectives of bail before, but parole is given under emergency, for example, death, illness of someone very concerned, a relative, mom, dad or spouse. In that case, a prisoner is given parole so that emergency happens. But furlough is generally given for reform and social bonding, so that consider for example, a prisoner, the objective of prison or objective of giving sentence is to create social reform and mental reform in a prisoner. So, in that case, if a prisoner as per the concerned authorities has reformed to a minimum extent, then the probability of him being given furlough is more, so that he goes outside and attests his reform and has a social bonding to come inside the prison to spread it inside the prison too. So, bail is generally given by court, while parole is given by, parole and furlough are given by prison authorities. It counts it does not count as a sentence because it is given under before conviction, while both parole and furlough are given during the sentence. One thing I wanted to tell you about the difference between parole and furlough is that consider for example, a particular prisoner A is being given parole and a particular prisoner B is being given furlough. Consider both of them have the same sentence, 3 years. So, if they both are given a break of 15 days, then in that case both are given, he is given a parole of 15 days while he is given a furlough of 15 days. In this hypothesis, if they have a sentence of let us say 1000 days, then the difference between parole and furlough is that this 15 days is not deducted in the sentence of the prisoner, while if he goes out in the case of furlough, then this 15 days is deducted in the sentence of the prisoner. This is a primary difference between furlough and parole. So you should know, in this article we have seen the types, what constitutes a bail, reason for granting a bail, reason for not granting the bail, and what are the different types of bail that might be asked in UPSC. Then we ultimately saw what is the difference between parole, furlough, and how are these three different from each other. Moving on to the next article. One more point I wanted to add is, these are certain phrases or judgment verdicts given by Supreme Court regarding bail. So as we saw before, bail is the rule and jail is the exception is the verdict given in State of Rajasthan versus Balchand, while Supreme Court has also quoted that delay in trial strengthens the case for bail. So more the trial is conducted, the possibility of giving bail is more, because the personal liberty of the individual is affected. So this is also a verdict given by Supreme Court. In other case, under trial detention should not become punitive. So these are the three statements given by Supreme Court regarding bail, and these are popular, which can be used in mains too. Moving on to the next article, new era of fiscal prudence, Delhi gets its public account. So fact that many senior aspirants also might not know is, the UT of Delhi is the only UT/state which does not have a public account of its own. So this is a very important fact UPSC might ask in this prelims also. So Delhi gets its own public account. So we will see in this article what are the type of accounts that a state government should have, what is National Small Savings Fund, and why did not Delhi have a public account of its own before, and why is it necessary from now. So these are the things we will see in this article. Moving on to the provisions in this article. So what are the types of account the state government should have? It should have three accounts: consolidated fund of the state government, contingency fund of the state government, and public account of the state government. This is a very normal basic every UPSC aspirant should know, but we will see about the details of it so that this article is explained easily and is understood very easily. So first constitute, these are three funds, as I told you before, is consolidated, contingency, and public account. The first is Article 2, under Article 266. Every state government should have a consolidated fund of its own. It is the most important account of a state government, wherein consolidated fund of India, consolidated fund of the state has all the loans and revenues, and you make all the expenditures. So all the loans and revenues come into the consolidated fund of the state, and all expenditures are made from that. So it is the most important account of the state government. All government expenditure is made from this account, and all revenues and tax and non-tax revenues and loans raised fall into this account only. So since it is the most important account of the state government, no money can be withdrawn without legislature's approval. That is a money or a financial bill. So this is the first type of account, consolidated fund of India. Moving on to the contingency fund of India under Article 267. This, what does contingency mean? It is contingency means an unforeseen situation. So state government withdraws money from this account only if it sees an unforeseen emergency of an expenditure. So since it is dealing with an unforeseen expenditure, it is generally operated by governor of a state, and the money withdrawn must be subsequently approved by the legislature and recouped. So money can be taken out of the contingency fund of the India, and then similar money has to be pledged in again. Similar money has to be replaced again there by a legislative approval. But the taking of the money can be authorized by the governor because he operates the account. Moving on to public, so this involves post legislative approval, while in the consolidated fund of India requires approval for withdrawing the money itself. Third constitutes the public account of the state. Article 266 deals with the public account of the state, wherein money that does not belong to the government but is belonging to the citizens or the public where government acts as the custodian or trustee of the account is called as public account of the state. The legislative approval is not required for this, as the money is not the government's revenue. So, what money is in this account? National Small Savings Fund is a public account of the union government created to pool collections from small savings account. So, as I told you before, if public, this topic is about public account. So, if public, as we saw now, if public account is constituting NSSF fund, so we will see what constitutes NSSF2. Moving on to the next slide. These are the sources of NSSF. So, post office savings account, public's provident fund, national savings certificate, Kisan Vikas Patra and Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, all these funds go into NSSF or public account of India or the state. So, how does NSSF work? Small savings collected across the state are across different states are credited to public account of India. So, states can borrow from NSSF to meet their financing needs. NSSF of state A, state B, all are transferred to the public account, and whenever state requires any money, then they can be borrowed to the from the public account through the NSSF scheme, and these will be treated as liabilities of the state. Since they are borrowing, they have to give it back, but all their NSSF money is being credited to public account of it. This is how NSSF works. Money got through NSSF is given to public account, and if whenever you are in exigency of money, you can borrow from there. Any borrowing will be considered as liability of the state government. Now coming to the issue, why till now, why did Delhi not have a public account on its own? So all UTs, one fact you should know is all UTs, all hilly states and small states and all big states of India, these are the this is a classification given by Niti Aayog to classify states according to different indicators and economy. So all these states except Delhi, the national capital of Delhi, had a public account of its own, but Delhi did not have a public account of its own. So in this case, what is the reason why they were not given public account is because Delhi is a UT with a legislative nature and not a full-fledged state. In that case, historically all the finances of Delhi were managed by central government, and there was no need for a separate public account for the union territory of Delhi. This is why they did not historically have a public account earlier. So Delhi, how did they release their funds? They heavily depended upon NSSF loans from the public account of India, and so they did not require an independent public account structure like other states. And Delhi also did not operate a small accounts, as I told you before, NSSF is operating in all states, but Delhi did not operate large scale small savings or trust funds independently. So Delhi largely avoided market based borrowing and was dependent upon assistance from the center and NSSF from public account of India. But why Delhi needs a public account now? Because Delhi plans to shift from dependency on NSSF to market loans now. Why? Because market loans are comparatively lesser interest, meaning more cheaper, easier to get, so more flexible and better aligned with fiscal discipline norms. So cheaper and more accessible loan is easier to give back. So they will have a better fiscal discipline ratio than comparing to NSSF. So having a public account on own also has governance benefits in a case where they will have better cash management. There is a reduced dependence on as I told you, if market borrowings are cheaper, this means that NSSF are comparatively costlier. So in that sense, the reduced dependence on a high interest loan will always be benefitable for the beneficiary. So in that case, it is a benefit for Delhi government, and its benefit, they will have a better cash management ratio because interest is low. The prompt paying back of the loan will give them better transparency in fiscal operations, and it shows a progress towards maturity in fiscal governance for the NCT of Delhi. Moving on to the next topic, as I discussed before, multiple DNAs have talked about Shanti Bill and Shanti Act in detail, But this explainer that came in the Hindu talks completely about, gives a overall framework about it. It's a preparation material so that you can revise whatever happened in Shanti Bill. For example, if you have not followed any of the things regarding Shanti Bill till now, so then this explanation or this particular article covers everything or the most of the things that might be asked by UPSC in regarding Shanti Bill. So kindly I will go through all the provisions faster because this might be a thing that has been covered in DNAs before. If you are a person who has not followed anything regarding Shanti Bill, kindly pause every slide and read whatever is in the slide so that you will understand better. I have made a comprehensive detail regarding the text given in the about the provisions of the Shanti Bill. So wherever you want to know something about the Shanti Bill, pause this particular slide and read all details if you don't have any idea or comprehension about this bill in particular. So this particular article will be taken fast so that you will this will be like a revision material of all the Shanti Bill related DNAs that you have seen before. Moving on to the next slide. Parliament has passed the Shanti, Sustainable Harnessing and Advancement of Nuclear Energy in India bill recently. So why did we pass it? We are telling that we need an energy transition towards a cleaner fuel, supporting a 20,000 crore nuclear energy mission of India, promoting SMRs, small modular reactors and advanced pressure water reactors. Since India's nuclear sector always remained under the state control and private or foreign investors or individuals could not participate in this particular sector because of two acts which were prevalent before: Atomic Energy Act 1962 and Civil Liability for Nuclear Disaster Act the Nuclear Damage Act 2010. So these two have been relaxed and now foreign supplier participation and private Indian participation, it is allowed through Shanti Bill. So relax promotion of these two entities by relaxing these two acts is the primary objective of Shanti Bill. Moving on to the what constitutes Shanti Bill. As I said you before, it's an overarching legislation which opens India's nuclear power sector to, as I told you before, private and public participation. So what can private Indian companies do? They can own, build and operate nuclear power plants. But what can foreign suppliers do? There is no explicit provisions of FDI. They can contribute to supplier participation. They cannot own, build and operate nuclear power plants in India, but they can participate in the supply chain by being a component of a supplier. So three things to note: the private can own, build and operate nuclear plants, while the foreign players can involve through supplier, so they involve as suppliers, but there is no provision of explicit FDI for foreign players through the Shanti Bill in the nuclear sector. This is one good point to be noted, which might be asked by UPSC in upcoming pre. So in certain components of nuclear sector, even now government has the overall control by maintaining 51% of the share, while private can participate up to 49% in the following sectors: nuclear fuel production, pressure heavy water management and radioactive waste management, safety mechanisms, licensing oversight. In all of this, government still constitutes the major player by owning a 51% stake in these sectors, while private still can participate only to a 49% minority stakeholder. And this bill particularly ends Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited's monopoly over plant operations. So we saw where can private involve, how much public has stake in that, and the end of NPCL's monopoly over plant operations. This also enables PPP in fuel fabrication, equipment manufacturing, plant operation and R&D regarding nuclear sector. So PPP is also promoted in these areas. And as I told you before, under India's nuclear energy mission, deployment of small modular reactors and indigenous reactor designs are also promoted through Shanti Bill. Moving on to the next slide. Atomic Energy Regulatory Board was established under the erstwhile Atomic Energy Act. But this Shanti Bill or Act gave statutory status and made it answerable to the parliament. So, this is one good provision of Shanti bill. And AERB is responsible for nuclear safety, radiation protections from plant operations, emergency preparedness and quality assurance of the energy produced. So, even now it has been given the authority of issuing licenses, safety standards and inspections. So, does it have any component regarding industrial safety and occupational safety? Yes, it has. It administers industrial safety under the Factories Act and plays a crucial role to increase the PPP in the region. Till now there is a criticism by the opposition parties that concentration of regulatory power in a single institution called AERB is consolidated by this bill. So, this is a criticism and these are the powers given to AERB under the new Shanti bill. Moving on to the next point, next slide. What are the safeguards given under the bill? There is no explicit provision for FDI in nuclear sector through this bill. Then AERB authorization is mandatory for anything concerning radioactive materials, production, possession or disposal, then any radiation generating equipments and any creating, operating or decommissioning of any plants. For all these three you need mandatory authorization from AERB. You need mandatory authorization. Government still retains, is it so that Shanti bill has completely privatized nuclear sector? No, government still retains control over high level radioactive waste, heavy water production, enrichment and isotope separation and reprocessing of spent fuel. So, anything regarding radioactive materials, that is spent fuel and radioactive waste, anything regarding high radiation generating equipment, heavy water production and separation, it is still in the hand of government, so that any radioactive hazard or pollution does not happen. The very prominent feature of this act is establishing a nuclear liability fund to meet any compensation in case of future accidents. So, we will see about what constitutes this nuclear liability fund. They have created a clear and a predictable liability gaps. For example, if any private player opens large plants of the size producing 3600 megawatts, then you should set aside a corpus of 3600 crores, so 3000 crores, so that it acts as nuclear liability fund. And it's for any plant, medium sized plant, then it's 1500 crores, and for any small modular plants it's 100 crores. So, there are apart from this, there are certain penalties if you cause any severe legal violation. So, for every severe legal violation the penalty given is 1 crore, and over and above that, if any, for example, it is said that in Fukushima the liability caused by the disaster was 700 times more than the nuclear liability fund given by the owner of the disaster. So, if there is any liability over and above what the operator gives, then union government will bear the liability over the operator's cap. So, one of the criticized features in this bill is supplier liability. Whoever supplies, foreign suppliers are being promoted through Shanti bill, as we already saw. So, supplier liability is completely removed in the Shanti bill. That is, this principle affects the polluters. I think you might know what is polluter pay principle. Go and read extended producer responsibility and polluters pay principle. So, supplier liability is completely removed through bills. For example, suppliers who are giving defective parts, faulty equipments, design inefficiencies and deliberate acts that might cause damage in production, supplier will not be held liable, only the operator will be held liable. So, this gives a greater unnecessary liberty to supplier class. What is the rationale behind government bringing up this bill? It strengthens energy security of India, obviously with by substituting fossil fuels and fuel imports, nuclear energy can become the future forerunner of India. Then it ensures 24/7 base load power. You should know what is the term base load power. You know the term grid. So grid should operate 24/7 power, and any power source giving continuous and consistent power to the grid 24/7 is called base load power. So any power source that continuously and consistently gives minimal interference power to the grid is called as base load power. And since nuclear energy is a perennial continuously renewable source of energy, it can give 24/7 power to the grid. So this is called, this ensures, so coming back to our point, nuclear energy ensures 24/7 base load power. So it will be, as I told you, it will reduce dependence of fossil fuels, it will reduce dependence on coal, and will promote economic growth and technological advancement in India with private public partnership coming into play. And India has pledged to attain net zero carbon by 2070. We have several deals, nuclear deals and nuclear plants still being stalled in India in several stages with US, France and Japan, with private players coming into play. Dependence on other countries for installation of nuclear projects might reduce multiplicably, and we are also depending too much on Russia for installation of nuclear plants. So this also gives us a geostrategic independence. Moving on to the next slide. Why does India need nuclear energy per se? Because a limitation of renewables is low in India due to geographical features, climate features and high storage and grid integration costs. Wind and solar energy production has temporal and spatial problems. We have a higher continued dependence on coal, and nuclear energy is reliable, affordable, and as I said it can consistently give large scale base load power. What are the criticisms by opposition? You should also know what are the negatives of the bill. Might not be asked in prelims, but might help you in writing in mains. What are the opposition given by this? They are saying this is allowing profit driven private firms to come in a sector which is of high national security importance. Then, as I said you before, removal of supplier liability is the most criticized point because it removes the polluters pay principle. Then as I told this example before, Fukushima damages is 700 times the proposed caps. So liability cap and penalty considered are very inadequate compared to the disaster that a nuclear reactor might cause. And as I said you, the operator liability that is being given is not indexed to inflation or long term health and environmental costs. So after 10 years, 300 crores or 100 crores by SMR will not be nothing compared to their cost, inflation occurring or the environmental cost it might cause. So these are the provisions that constitute Shanti bill. There are some facts you should know that might be asked in prelims. Section 39 of this act overrides RTI restricting access to these details. So since even if private player comes into play, these details in the name of national security have been restricted access to. And section 42 exempts nuclear facilities from general labor safety law, creating occupational hazards to people who might work there. And this bill does not have any provision for mandatory public hearing, EIA impact, community surrounding the nuclear reactors are not consented. There is no parliamentary scrutiny on this particular bill, and the regular public safety reporting was not done for this bill. So this bill also, there is also a citation in this article saying that France, a country, developed country, P5 country like France, still has state controlled nuclear facilities. So these are the criticisms of the bill. So in this particular bill, we saw about what constitutes the bill, what is the objective of the bill, what are the primary provisions of the bill, how the power has been transferred to AERB regarding the regulatory oversights, and what are the negatives or criticisms of the bill. Moving on to the next article, red flags over Greenland, why US wants to annex the territory. So post the capture of Venezuelan President Maduro, US President Donald Trump has said he has wishes to annex the Danish territory of Greenland, Danish province of Greenland. He said he absolutely needs it for defense, and there are several reports showing Greenland along with American flag, embraced by American flag. So, this has become an issue, and this shows US interest to annex Greenland too. So, in this particular article we will see about certain provisions and basics that you need to know about Greenland and why US is interested in annexation of Greenland. So, moving on to the next slide. Greenland is the world's largest non-continental island which is found between North America and Europe in the North America, and it's above North America, and it's westwards to the continent of Europe in the North Atlantic Ocean. So, geographically it is a part of North America, while politically it belongs to Denmark. It's actually a Danish province. It was a colony of Denmark, Danish before, and it has become a province of Denmark now. So, it's geographically part of North America, but politically a part of Denmark. So, what are the borders of Greenland? It consists of Arctic Ocean to the top and North Atlantic Ocean to the southeast, while it has Davis Strait to the southwest and Baffin Bay to the west, and it also has Greenland Sea to the east. So, it has Arctic Ocean to the top and North Atlantic Ocean to the south, while Greenland Sea to the east and Davis Strait and Baffin Bay to the west. So, Davis Strait, why am I explaining all this? Davis Strait might become one of the world mapping questions in UPSC. So, Davis Strait connects Baffin Bay to the north and Labrador Sea to the south. So, Davis Strait connects two bays together, Baffin Bay and Labrador Sea. You can know also the capital of Greenland, because if they can ask this question through places in news. So, two things you should know is about Davis Strait, and capital of Greenland is Nuuk, and it is geographically a part of North America, the continent of North America, while it's politically a part of Denmark. So, these are, as you have seen, the provisions of Greenland. Now, we will see why US wants Greenland. So, why does US want Greenland? First and foremost, for any geopolitical importance, it's always the strategic interest. So, America is interested in Greenland, the world's largest island, because the future Arctic sea routes might have emerging shipping lanes around Greenland. This is one point. Second point is, during the post Cold War times, US had during 1945 to 91, US had Thule Air Base in Greenland. So, this might be a very militarily strategic area too, because till now there is the Thule Air Base in space, the Thule Air Base in Greenland is being used as Pitufik space base by US, and from Greenland the US can monitor and stop any threats. Considering this as Greenland, USA wants to stop any incoming threats from Russia or China and neutralize it with base from Greenland. So, they are using this as a threat neutralizing area with any threats or missiles coming from China or Russia or even North Korea. So, similarly, US also can launch missiles from Greenland easily to any part of Asia and Europe. In recent years, there is also said to have been, like Djibouti's, go and see why Djibouti is the military base of the world. Same way, Russia and China are also trying to open up many military bases in the Arctic Circle, and Greenland may be a susceptible area. Mineral resources. Greenland has the largest reserves of not just traditional resources like gold, nickel and cobalt, but also has a plethora of rare earth minerals. In this case, what are rare earth minerals? Rare earth minerals are critical components being used in minerals being extensively used in critical consumer technology such as phones, electric vehicles, as well as in new military applications. So, China is currently the largest reserve or the supplier of rare earth minerals, and since Greenland also has a greater potential for rare earth minerals, China has started investing in major mineral companies of Greenland, wherein it is said that 11% of the investments in mineral sector in Greenland is by China, Australia and then US. So, annexation of Greenland by US will automatically annihilate and eliminate these players in mineral market. Polar Silk Route. China, when it released the white paper on Arctic policy, considered Arctic Sea Route as its Polar Silk Route. So, this might be militarily or trade wise benefiting China in multiple ways. So, US also wants to stop these developments and wants to dissuade Denmark from allowing too many Chinese companies in the island. So, US wants Greenland for three purposes: strategic purposes, that is primarily the defense arena; mineral resources exploration, they want capture of mineral resources, particularly rare earth minerals from these areas; and third way, they do not want any political influence or trade promotion by China in these areas. So, predominantly US wants to annex Greenland to stop Chinese inhibition in this area. Moving on to the next article, this is one of the fantastic articles that came today in paper. Kindly read it if you can, or pause every slide in this. I have taken most of the information that you need for remote sensing from this. Possible questions from this slide: what are the possible applications or uses of remote sensing satellites? Can be completely answered through this article alone if question is asked in UPSC. In this way, this article, if you have time, go back and read for sure. Now, otherwise, please pause every slide in this presentation and completely read it. I have organized a comprehensive explanation about what constitutes a remote sensing satellite and how does it figure, what kind of tree, what type of mineral, or what is the amount of groundwater present in any particular area. So, going on to the next slide, remote sensing is a technology where you can find whatever is present on the ground and map the entire Earth's resources without even touching the ground. This is the concept of remote sensing. In this sense, it can be used to find water, it can be used to amount of groundwater, it can be used to find the health of a tree, and it can be also used to find the amount of minerals present inside the satellite. In this way, I will tell you how remote sensing operates. We can see only visible light spectrum from the sun, but sun also emits other spectrum such as near infrared, short waved infrared, UV and visible light spectrum. So, whenever sunlight is falling on any particular object, the objects also emit back reflections of different spectrum levels. So, these are called spectral signatures, and the difference in reflection from different bodies act as fingerprint on knowing the composition of the mineral substance or object that the reflection comes from. So, this is the basis of remote sensing, wherein sun's reflection on an object A, sun's insolation on an object A gives back reflection, and when a remote sensing satellite through a sensor captures the reflection, can denote based on the spectral signatures that what is the composition, quantity or quality of the object from where reflection comes. This is the basis of remote sensing. So, how can you determine, one more point that we have missed is, so if sun insolation from a sun is reflected from a plant, and if plant generally absorbs red light and gives out near infrared light. So, if sun observes, if the reflection considers a lot of near infrared light and there is a lesser proportion of red light, then you can say that the plant is a healthy plant. So, in this sense, moving on to the next slide, how can remote sensing help in vegetation? So, farmers and forest rangers use satellites to check the health of a plant. For example, if the reflection from a plant has a higher proportion of near infrared light, then it means the plant is healthy. But if the proportion of near infrared light is lesser, then it means that the plant is thirsty or sick. This can determine the healthiness of a patch of land of a forest, or it can determine the healthiness of an entire state in a place. So, this is how ISFR determines forest cover, for tree cover and forest health ka quantity also. So, this way remote sensing can be used to check the healthiness of a plant, tree or a forest. This was used by researchers even to distinguish between different plant communities and tree species across the entire forest. That is how you can calculate the quantity, quality and the number of species in a forest just by remote sensing. Also, this can also be used to determine the biomass of a forest, that is essentially meaning finding the weight of trees in the entire forest without even coming to the forest, just to understand how much carbon they are storing to help climate change. So, this is already an UPSC question. Stored organic carbon can be determined by biomass of a tree or a forest. This determines how much carbon capture is done by a particular tree or a forest. So, this way stored organic carbon can help us in determining how much we are contributing to climate change, how much sequestration happens by a particular country or a forest. So, remote sensing helps in calculating biomass and preventing climate change analysis also. How can remote sensing be used in mapping water? So, for mapping water, there are two technologies: optical indexing, which is nothing but what we saw now, reflection of light and the associated calculation along with it, and synthetic aperture radar. You might have known NISAR if you have studied current affairs in last year. NASA, ISRO, synthetic aperture radar. So, we will talk about synthetic aperture radar, which uses active radio waves as found in radar. So, first coming back to it, how will we map water? Water reflects visible green light and absorbs near infrared and short wave infrared light. So, this is absorbed and green light goes away. That is why when you go deep in the waters, you will find that deep waters are always bluish green in color, because green has already been reflected from that arena. So, this is so when you compare it and normalize the difference water index, the presence of water indicates reflection of green light from a particular area. So, when we compare, high positive value of green light determines high positive value of presence of a water body there. This can be used to differentiate when reflected light from a data of reflected light from a particular place. This can be used to determine whether the particular place is a land or a water body. But if you take in arena of an urban area where it is dispersed between multiple areas, then we don't use normalized difference water index, which is the analysis of green light per se. We used modified NDWI, wherein you can distinguish between shadows casted by tall buildings. We can distribute between shadows, we can distribute between buildings or land material, and we can distribute between water material. This can also be done by water mapping. Also, as we said, we were talking about two techniques: optical indexing, and we were talking about synthetic aperture radar. What is the deficit of optical indexing? Visible light cannot cross through clouds. So, how do we do water mapping when there is a lot of? How do we map flood water when the area is covered by clouds? So, optical indexing. 1 minute. Optical cameras have a weakness; they cannot see through clouds at night. So, we require synthetic aperture radars, that is active use of radio waves. So, how can it find? Synthetic aperture radars use radio waves, and radio waves reflect back from all the substances in all directions, from substances such as soil, grass and buildings. However, calm water reflection appears as pitch black when you are at the receiving end. So, this shows a differentiation between what constitutes solid materials and what constitutes water body depending upon the pitch black response in the SIR. So, this way you can find difference between water body and a land body. If presence of cloud is not there, you can use optical indexing. If presence of clouds are there, then you can use synthetic aperture radar with the active use of radio waves. Satellites also can estimate the quality of water. For example, muddy water has a different reflection ratio compared to normal water. So, this can determine the muddiness present in a water. Also, presence of algae in a particular water has a different reflection ratio compared to a normal clear water. So, this can help in determining quality of water bodies in a particular area and also the pollution levels or the presence of harmful algal blooms in a particular area. Next, moving on to the presence of underground water in a particular area, underground mapping in a particular area. For example, minerals like copper, gold and lithium often form deep underground for years, but geologically move towards the surface. So, instead of normal sensors, hypospectral sensors can found them. What is hypospectral sensors? For example, a normal camera, light comes, reflects on an object and goes back. A normal sensor generally differentiates lights into, analyzes based upon three colors: blue, green and red. But a hypospectral sensor splits the image into multiple pixels and analyzes the light coming out of that through a prism or a grating and splits the light into hundreds of various narrow continuous colors to get an exact result, so that every pixel in the image determines every component. So, this creates a higher resolution of the output compared to a normal optical imaging. For example, we talked about two cases. This is a normal camera, this is a hyperspectral camera. So, for reflection of that, can say for in a particular case, a particular reflection you can say from a normal camera saying this is green and it is a tree, while in a hyperspectral camera from the same reflection you can say this is a banyan tree, it has nitrogen deficiency and the rock next to it is limestone and sandstone. So, this is the resolution output that you can get from a particular hyperspectral camera. For example, in these using these cameras, these sensors have been able to map alteration zones, meaning how is a mineral formed due to continuous heat and pressure. Chemistry of the surface rocks is changed and a mineral rock is formed. So, the areas which can possibly create minerals in the future, that is called as alteration zones. So, these areas, the potential reserves also can be tapped by using hypospectral sensors. Also, I told you this because with the help of remote sensing satellites, you can find potential areas on where to drill and explore particular minerals rather than drilling in multiple places. How is that possible? I will tell you the process surrounding it. For example, in a particular forest, due to high, as we said before, minerals are formed due to high pressure and high temperature. So, due to that high pressure, there can be cracks in the crust layer and minerals such as gas and oil can seep out from this. Due to this, this is called as micro seepage. Due to this micro seepage, the color of the leaves in the trees nearby might turn yellow, and hypospectral analysis of this turning of yellow might tell you the presence of oil beneath the or near the trees in a particular forest. This helps in targeted exploration of minerals in particular areas, saving a lot of money for the exploration sector. This is a case when there is micro seepage. What if there is no micro seepage? How do you understand whether that which area has what? Not all the mineral exploration areas have micro seepage. So, if in the absence of micro seepage, there is another technique which helps in remote sensing. wherever oil is generally due to, you have heard of the term permeability and porosity. So, due to permeability and porosity, oil is found in a particular area in structures called anticlines or a dome shaped cap. So, oil / gas is always found in these areas. So, because of this cap, due to sedimentary erosion or sedimentary basin, because oil and gas is generally found in sedimentary basins. So, in sedimentary basins, due to continuous deposition and the formation of this anticlines, which is the highest probable area of oil to be found, this bulges outside, and in any difference in bulge can denote a geological structure where minerals are present. This is one type where micro seepage is not necessary, and you can find the underlying oil area, or else if sunlight reflects in deep sea floor, and any deflection in deep sea floor can be identified, and they can be potential geological structures where oil or any other mineral can be present. So, if microseepage is there, spectral analysis can help you in finding mineral present niche due to the change in color of the trees, and if microseepage is not there, then any geological deformation in land or deep sea can mean there is a potential of geological presence of oil underneath the soil. So, this ultimately, without microseepage you cannot say oil is there or not there, but you can say the geological formation concerning the presence of oil can be possible. So, this helps exploration company to not drill everywhere and be disappointed on not finding an oil. The increased probability data gives them where to find and what to find more. Kindly read every slide. This will help you in understanding the concept behind it, so that you can answer any possible implication or application of remote sensing data. Also, compared to, this is a dry rock. I will tell you how remote sensing satellites find this, presence of underground water aquifer. This is a dry rock. So, reflection on a dry rock, there is a satellite 1 and there is a satellite 2. So, reflection on a dry rock will have no difference in gravity, because dry rock does not have any overburdened pressure of water. So, there is no difference in a gravity from a single component called solid rock. But if there is a presence of a wet rock or a aquifer, then it is overburdened or underburdened by pressure of water. Then the reflection will cause difference in, the first reflection and the second reflection will cause difference in time due to presence of differential gravity. So, this difference found by satellite 1 and satellite 2 rotating around the earth will tell you which place has what amount of water and how groundwater has reduced over time. That is how, in a recent report, GRACE, a satellite by NASA, told that North Indian states are losing groundwater at an alarming rate due to heavy withdrawal of water to irrigate crops. This data came out of remote sensing because of spectral analysis of water underground. So, remote sensing, to conclude this, remote sensing makes it helpful in finding the health of, count of, and the quality of tree forest ecosystem, and it also helps in determining areas where there are potential minerals resources and there are potential or difference in groundwater aquifers in the area. So, kindly go and read this article in detail, and thank you for listening to the session. Hope you had great fun and understanding and knowledge after this session. Thank you.